frozen runway, a distant roar, and a fighter jet no one expected to see there. This wasn't Sweden, it was Canada, and that jet, the Saab Gripen E, was about to rewrite everything Canada thought it knew about air power. For decades, the Royal Canadian Air Force has been tied to American machines. From the CF-18 Hornet to decades of joint training and NATO operations, Canada's skies have always echoed with US-made engines. But when Ottawa began searching for its next-generation fighter, the jet that would defend one of the largest airspaces on Earth, few expected that the biggest challenge wouldn't come from Lockheed Martin's F-35, but from a small, icy Nordic nation with just 10 million people. In a world obsessed with stealth, sensors, and trillion-dollar budgets, Sweden built something different. A jet designed not to dominate by cost or size, but by logic. They called it the Gripen E, and when Canada quietly tested it, the results left experts stunned. Canada's fighter replacement program was supposed to be simple. Retire the aging CF-18s, buy new jets, align with allies. But nothing about Canada's defense policy is ever that simple. The country's skies stretch from the Pacific to the Arctic, from the Atlantic to the world's quietest and most hostile airspace. The North, to protect it, Canada needs a fighter that can operate where GPS fails, where temperatures drop below -40, and where refueling or maintenance can be hundreds of miles away. The Americans said, buy the F-35, a fifth-generation stealth jet, loaded with the world's most advanced sensors. The Europeans said, take the Typhoon, proven, powerful, NATO-ready. But Sweden whispered, we have something built for places like yours. At first, few took that seriously. A small Swedish jet against billion-dollar projects? The idea almost sounded naive. Critics laughed. The Gripen, cute jet, great for air shows, not for defending the Arctic. Analysts said it couldn't compete with stealth. Politicians said Canada should stay in the club, meaning stick with the Americans. But Canada didn't ignore the Swedes, because beneath the polite Nordic tone was a quiet confidence. Saab claimed the Gripen E could do what others couldn't. Take off from a short stretch of icy highway, refuel in minutes, swap engines in the snow, and still fight. And when the Gripen E's data link system connected multiple jets to share targeting data faster than the F-35's own network, eyebrows began to rise in Ottawa. The Swedes weren't bluffing. Then came the test. Deep in Canada's frigid north, the Gripen E was brought in for evaluation, an unofficial, limited trial meant to assess performance under Arctic conditions. The results weren't public, but leaks and insider reports painted a clear picture. The Gripen E handled the cold like it was born for it, because it was. Its engine didn't stall in freezing wind. Its electronics didn't flicker in sub-zero fog. Its turnaround time, the minutes it takes to refuel, rearm, and fly again, crushed expectations. One technician later said, it felt like working on a pickup truck compared to a spaceship. That was a compliment, because while modern jets like the F-35 require climate-controlled hangars, specialized tools, and entire teams of engineers, the Gripen was built for simplicity, for soldiers on icy roads, not techs in climate labs, and that simplicity suddenly looked like a superpower. The turning point came when Canada's analysts began calculating what the Gripen E really offered. Not just its cost, though it was dramatically cheaper, but its philosophy. Every part of the Gripen was designed around independence. It could use commercial roads as runways. It could operate from tiny air bases scattered across the tundra. It could share real-time data with other aircraft, even if satellites went dark. In other words, it was made for a country that couldn't rely on others to always be there. Sound familiar? That's Canada. And suddenly, the question wasn't whether Sweden could build a world-class fighter. It was whether Canada was ready to stop renting security and start owning it. When defense analysts compared life cycle costs, the numbers were staggering. The Gripen E's projected cost per flight hour was roughly one-third of the F-35's. Its logistics chain was lighter. Its upgrade path was open. No secret black box software from foreign suppliers. As one defense insider put it, with the F-35, you buy the jet, but the US still holds the keys. With the Gripen, Canada would hold them itself. That difference, control versus dependency, hit deep within Ottawa's defense circles. Because Canada's air defense isn't just about fighting wars. It's about sovereignty, about patrolling the Arctic, about intercepting Russian bombers before they reach the North American perimeter. And in those frozen skies, stealth doesn't matter as much as endurance, communication, and reliability. The Gripen offered all three. By now, word had spread. In defense circles across Europe and even in Washington, whispers grew louder. Canada's impressed with the Gripen. Tests went better than expected. Saab's proposal might actually win. The Americans didn't laugh anymore. Lockheed Martin ramped up its lobbying. NATO allies quietly began questioning how a small, Scandinavian nation had built something that could rival, and in some cases outperform, their own multi-billion-dollar jets because the truth was uncomfortable. While others chased perfection with price tags to match. Sweden focused on logic, and logic was winning. When the Royal Canadian Air Force pilots who flew the Gripen were later asked for impressions, one reportedly said, "It feels like it was designed by people who actually fly." Another added, "You can feel the practicality in every switch." Those may sound like small comments, but in aviation, they mean everything, because warplanes aren't just technology, they're trust. And when pilots trust their jet, it becomes an extension of themselves. That's what the Gripen E did best. The climax of this quiet saga came not in a press release, but in a realization Canada's search for a fighter wasn't about prestige, but survival. In a future where Arctic routes are opening, where Russian bombers probe northern airspace, and where NATO's commitments grow uncertain, Canada needs independence as much as it needs firepower. And suddenly, Sweden's small jet didn't look small anymore. It looked right. Even though Canada ultimately leaned toward the F-35 politically, the Gripen E left a mark that still echoes in defense circles. It proved that smaller nations can challenge the giants, that smart design can outthink brute spending, and that sometimes the best aircraft isn't the one everyone talks about. It's the one that quietly does the job. After the tests, Sweden didn't gloat. They didn't launch flashy campaigns or issue threats. They just smiled. The calm, confident smile of a country that knows it built something special. Because the Gripen E had done more than impress Canada. It had changed the conversation. Today, military analysts around the world are rethinking what fifth generation even means. Brazil flies Gripens now. Finland, once skeptical, is watching closely. And Canada, though it made its decision, knows the Gripen story isn't over. The Swedes didn't build the biggest jet. They built the smartest. And in an era of rising costs and shifting alliances, that might just be the ultimate weapon. In a sky full of giants, it was the smallest that made history. The day Sweden's Gripen E took off from a frozen Canadian runway, it did more than prove its worth. It reminded the world that true power isn't about how much you spend. It's about how well you think.